Hey everyone, my name is Chris Hass. I'm a second and third grade teacher in Richland School District 2 and also a Midlands area rep for SC for Ed. And this video is part of a series that we're putting together to help voters become more informed on issues around education so that when they go to the polls, they can hopefully prioritize education near the top of their list for what they want to see happen in our November elections so that we can create positive change in our public school system. So this is for Senate District 22, and we are here with Republican candidate Lee Blatt, who is running against the Democrat incumbent Mia McLeod. And we did extend invitations to all candidates to attend tonight. And I want to thank Lee Blatt for being here. And maybe we could just get started with you introducing yourself a little bit and talking about your platform.
Sure. My name is Lee Blatt. Thank you for having me tonight. Running for State Senate in District 22. So if you're not sure what district you're in, it covers Forest Acres, Lake Catherine, Forest Lake, all the way out to the Fairfield County line. So Lake Catherine and Arcadia Lakes. Lake Carolina. It's having a hard time there. Up in parts of Blythewood. You want me to start? I kind of have a most prominent platform, I guess, to this discussion is I have a temporary title term, our vocational initiative. If you would like to, I can talk about that now, or we can do questions and talk about that after. It's kind of a direction I would like to see for our education system here in South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with those, and then anything that you want to add at the end, you could do that. So
okay.
My first question is, when you look at the current state of public education, I know we're talking during a pandemic, and you could certainly address those things if you would like to, but when we thought of this question, it was pre-pandemic. When you look at the current state of public education in the state of South Carolina, what are some things that stand out to you when you reflect on that?
Well, right now in South Carolina, I'm told by some members of the Senate that we're currently per pupil spending, if you add state, local, and federal funding, we're 24th in the nation in our spending. Our outcome is, I'm sure you know, testing is usually in the backside of the 40s. So our education system, I believe, leaves a lot to be desired in South Carolina. At the same time, we have a lot of really great schools. We do a good job. I would like to see our educational system pivot a little bit, but we can get into that in the vocational initiative. I can answer that probably a little better there.
Okay. So, and if it fits in these, certainly take that up. So my second question is, if you were elected, what would you want to prioritize as maybe your first line of action when you think about addressing public education in the state?
Again, it kind of goes towards the vocational initiative. Primarily in South Carolina, 27% of people have a 4-year degree or higher. Of the students that we graduate high school that do attend college, only 25% actually graduate college. So that's why I would like to see us pivot a little bit towards vocations or trades, technology. I don't want to bogart one of the questions with kind of my plan for it, but every question you've asked so far is kind of geared towards that. So,
okay. So you spoke to the budget a little bit earlier, and
yeah,
we know that the General Assembly, they established the formula by which we determine whether or not we are adequately funding our schools, and we're currently a little over $600 per student underfunded.
Yeah.
And that's always becomes a stressor on, we know we're underfunding schools, but we know that money has to come from somewhere. So how would you like to see the state address the underfunding of public education, knowing the demands for tax base also?
I think the model that we use for that is antiquated. We need to come in and reevaluate that entire model, in my opinion. The total amount. So currently 47% of our state budget goes towards education. So we're already putting a ton of state funds into education. Education doesn't get 40% of the attention in the legislature, which is a different story. But I don't necessarily think that all of our problems are the total pot of money that we have in education. I think it's how we've allocated that money. To answer one way is in South Carolina, we have, I believe it's 278 students per administrator. That's more administrators than you have in North Carolina, Georgia, including the national average by a good bit. If you get into Richland 2 and Richland 1, it's far worse. I believe Richland 2, it's 158 students per administrator. And it's even worse than that in Richland 1. I think Richland 1 has almost twice as many administrators as 2, from what I'm told. But I think, for one, we don't need near the number of administrators we have now. We don't need near the testing and requirements we have now. We exceed the national average on testing, also, from what I'm told. And most teachers I've talked to said they feel more like they're teaching to the next test than they are teaching the students, what they believe the most important aspects of whatever their field of study is. So I'd like to see us remove a lot of our administrators, which isn't always popular, but that money I would want to put in the classroom. I obviously think our teachers are far underpaid, and we made a good step this year in raising the bottom line of teacher pay a little bit. That was a good first step. I would personally want to see to at least get to the Southeastern national average as a start. The future of South Carolina depends on our education system. I don't want to underscore that at all by saying, that I feel like a lot of the budget is already in education, and that I don't necessarily feel that more of our pot of money for the state needs to go into it. But also administrators, again, not to knock administrators, a lot of them do incredible work that I couldn't do. Unfortunately, a lot of administrators don't do enough work, and a lot of administrative positions are jobs that I could do. A lot of them aren't. But I don't think that the average administrator should make more than your average teacher. I think a teacher's job is far more difficult than an administrator's job. I could balance books and do a lot of things that administrators do. I could not capture the hearts and minds of high school students and teach them math. That's a skill.
Yeah,
if that answers your question.
Yeah, and you mentioned salaries earlier. So I know in South Carolina, we put a freeze on salaries in 2008, which lasted for a couple of years. And then the small raises teachers were getting weren't even keeping up with inflation, to the point that even though teachers have gotten some raises the last 2 years, we're still making less based on inflation than we were in 2008. So seeing that we're having such a hard time retaining and recruiting teachers, that's not the whole problem, but that's certainly a part of the problem, because people deserve to get paid for
money. Yeah, money motivates. We've had my wife and I have had 2 friends that have left teaching because they could make more and work less per hour by going into the private sector. Like I said, education is the future of our state. I don't want to underscore that at all, and our teachers don't make near as much as we need to gain and retain qualified teachers. I think our inability, our attrition rates show that we're not paying near enough. I just want to go at it a little differently. I think our money is being mismanaged in our education system.
So you touched on this a little bit, but I'll give you an opportunity to expound on it if you'd like to. And the last question is going to address assessment. So you mentioned earlier, lots of teachers, and I'm very much one of these, who would say a lot of our time, as much as a fourth of our year, is spent preparing for or administering tests instead of teaching kids to learn loving or learn reading and all those sorts of things. What do you think the state could do to address what's happening now for assessment versus maybe what we would like to see happening in terms of assessment?
As far as how the actual assessments are done, is more of an educator's. It's more of a educator's answer than one that I can answer. As a potential legislator, that's outside my realm of knowledge. I would need to sit down with teachers, administrators, and board members. I think, unfortunately, teachers are too often left outside that discussion. I think they should have one of the primary voices in how those tests should be administered, and which ones are needed and which ones are not. But I've been told enough times now that I believe we are far over tested in the state. And some of that we'll have to get waivers from the federal government to relax some of that. I know our students' hearts and minds are often as important as the curriculum that's taught to them. I think I'll get into vocational plan in a minute, but part of that would be to get a waiver from the federal government on our testing requirements.
Okay. So those are my questions. You had some things that you wanted to share, so I'll go ahead and give you an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Without making this a 45-minute long video, I kind of gave you a little bit of the statistics in South Carolina on our students, where they graduate and where they go, and how many people have 4-year degrees. We pretty much set everyone up from middle school on to go to college, and we've in my opinion, set up a college or failure scenario. And far too many kids get off the graduation line and don't know what to do or where to go next, and unfortunately walk into the unemployment line. I would like for vocational schools not just to be something that you can take in an open or free period or an extra credit, but to be part of the core curriculum of our education system. I would like there to be a college track for anyone that elects to go that direction, can take just college preparatory classes and go that way. For the vast majority of students, I would like to see more classes that are more geared towards real life scenarios. Instead of macroeconomics for someone who's not on the college track, we could have personal finance, small business finance. A good chunk of people that go into the trade world end up starting their own businesses at some point. If you have a student that gets out of just about anything you can get at a tech school, currently, I believe we could get our students while they're in high school. Cosmetology, electrical certification, plumbing, welding, certified welders, starting salary somewhere in the $40,000 a year range. If you take a certified electrician and they continue their education, become a master electrician and become skilled in their trade, they could be making the low six figures. If you look at a general practitioner, they're low six figures, but they have 8 years of higher education, 3 years of residency, a year of fellowship, and $150,000 of debt on their back. Those three quarters of students that don't graduate college, most of them carry between $20,000 and $50,000 of debt on their back, and they didn't even finish college. They went to college because they were told that was the only direction for them to go in, and it took them a couple years in college to figure out that wasn't the right path for them. I don't want to knock college. I have an aeronautical engineering degree. My wife's a pharmacist. It's a great track for people if it's going to further your career in life. But for so many people, it's just not the right track, and we're just failing all those people at this point. That part of that curriculum again would be I would hope we would be able to get a waiver from the federal government to lessen our testing requirements and get more real world practical classes for our high school students. I know it's tough as well because high school students don't necessarily know what they want to do with their lives. But I think we could have internships and classes that go through what's available out there. We can also have industry partners where places like Boeing or BMW come in and they say, these are positions that we are lacking that we need filled, and we can make sure that we point students that may want to go in that route, in that direction, to come out with those certifications. Obviously, the technology sector has some of the largest number of open jobs out there now. And a lot of those certifications that you need to get those jobs, you could get in high school. You get them now at tech schools, or not anything you go to college for. I think this and speaking of college, if you go to school to become a teacher, currently if you do it certain ways, you can get your debt paid back by the state. I would like to see just about any way you do that. If you go to school to become a teacher, or if you get into teaching, for the state to pay back your student loans. Those student loans were put on your back so that you could become a teacher, and now the state just leaves you with all that debt. Like I said, there's certain ways they do pay it now. I'd like to broaden the scope of that legislation to cover, if you go to Harvard or Yale and you've got $200,000 of education behind you, it may take a little longer for the state to pay it off. But if you're a career educator, I think that your education should be paid for by the state. And most private industries, if you get a college degree or a higher education degree for your job, most corporate companies pay for that. I think the state should do that for our teachers.
Okay. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to say to voters before we sign off? I don't think so. My website's leeblatt.com, LEEBLATT. We're getting ready to launch a new section on the vocational initiative on the website. It also goes into some of my infrastructure plans and COVID relief for small businesses. But a lot more of that information will be on our website. Okay, so people can go to the website and learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. My email address is on there. It's lee@leeblatt.com. And my cell phone number is 803-622-8723. I'd love to talk with anyone that will be willing to do so.
Great. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon, and best of luck.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on here today. I really appreciate the opportunity.